Archbishop Dr. Dominiquae Bierman has traveled the world for over 3 decades, proclaiming the gospel made in Zion to the nations. She exposes the false doctrines of replacement theology and preaches restoration to the Jewish roots. Now join Archbishop Dominiquae in the latest Bible School on Wheels, exploring the entire land of Israel.
By the 20th century, we can see that the God of Israel is beginning to move in order to restore Israel to the Jewish people. We see already at the end of the 19th century with the rise of the first Zionistic Jewish Congress in Basel, Switzerland. We see the first Zionistic Jewish Congress with a prophet. I call him a prophet because he prophesied that we will be again a nation. And that was Theodor Herzl, or Benjamin Zeev Herzl. He was a journalist, and he was very upset about the anti-Semitism that he witnessed, and he began to write a book called Medinat HaYehudim, the nation of the Jews. And he says that when he was writing it, he felt a power stronger than himself that was pouring the words on that book. He said, I'm possessed of something greater than myself. We know who was the one that possessed him. And that's why I called him a prophet, because we see a movement, a Zionistic movement, of beginning to restore the Jewish people back to the land. We do not have a state yet. The state of Israel only begins officially as a nation among nations, or a renewed, reborn nation of Israel is in 14th of May of 1948. And we celebrated last year the 70th anniversary of Israel. And so we are going to now keep on celebrating more anniversaries, but the 70th was definitely a landmark. Amen. And so now what happens then on the First World War? Already we have a movement. Say a movement. Zionism. We already have a movement. We have Zionism already. We have Jews that are willing to come in the midst of the Turkish Empire. And what do they begin to do? They begin to buy land for money. I want you to remember this, please, throughout the entire journey, the entire tour, because you need to have this information when you answer the people when they tell you, oh, those Jews took the lands from the Arabs. We bought the land for money, and we bought it from the Turks. And we didn't buy what the Turks wanted, we bought what the Turks didn't want. That means sand dunes, rockeries, and swamps. And all of the first aliyahs before the State of Israel was formed was actually Jewish people leaving the comfort zone of the academics, coming and dry up the swamps, remove the rockeries, and begin to plant trees, and begin to plant orchards, and begin to make agriculture happen in this place. So by 1914, what do we have? We already have settlements of Jewish people in land that has been purchased from the Turks. Say with me, land purchased for money. And not just any kind of money, but a lot of money. The Turks didn't give us a discount. And we didn't even barter too much. We just wanted them to relinquish the land to us. And you're going to see as we go to Hebron tomorrow, and as we talk about it today, every important, meaningful, key piece of real estate in Israel not only is received by promise, but also by purchase. PP, promise and purchase. Amen? Say with me, promise, and purchase. And I'm going to tell you, in your lives, you're going to do everything by promise and purchase. You're going to have to pay the price. Things are not cheap when one obeys the will of Yah. So we are getting ready now to go into the most important place of prayer in the world. Not only for the Jewish people, especially for the Jewish people, but I'll tell you something. Every believer in the Messiah in the nations that believes in the Jewish Messiah Yeshua, this is a very important place of prayer because it is a fulfillment of 2 Chronicles 6 when King Solomon dedicated the temple, the first temple, and he said even if a foreigner, for example, comes from a distant land, he will pray towards the house. It's not the other house anymore. There's not even one stone upon another being left. But nevertheless, the Temple Mount is there. And the Temple Mount is Mount Moriah, the most important piece of real estate in the world, on which the third temple will be standing very soon. I'll tell you, I think very soon means very soon right now. Things are culminating. They're coming to a culmination. So we are going to have all the group go in and pray. I'm going to go in and pray as well. I've got my own prayers and needs of prayers to pray there. And I know that even though Adonai and Yahweh can answer me anywhere in the world and anywhere in Israel, there is still an open heavens at the Kotel, the western wall, which is the esplanade on which the temple stood during the time of Yeshua. Let's go.
Here at the Western Wall. Believing for miracles, signs and wonders. 24-hour prayer center in Yerushalayim. We're thankful to be here during Sukkot in this brand new year. L'Shana Tova to everybody out there. And we just send you the blessings from this Sukkot season to wherever you are. Because the blessing comes from Jerusalem. It goes throughout the world. Hallelujah.
Amen, amen, amen. We receive it, we receive it. In Yeshua's name.
I have read The Sheep Nation as written by Archbishop Dominiquae when I was studying at my GRM. There is a chapter called Key of Abraham. When I'm praying for Hong Kong, I use this Key of Abraham to pray for Hong Kong protests. In addition, I also pray for the church for Teshuvah as judgment is coming. And this book I strongly recommend when Matthew 25 said, the nations will be divided into sheep nation and goat nations. I strongly recommend to read this book.
And now back to Bible School on Wheels with Archbishop Dominiquae Bierman.
So now they purchased the land. How many other lands have been purchased in Israel that are very meaningful? You're going to go very soon to the Temple Mount area. You're going to see it above your heads. That is Mount Moriah. That's where Abraham sacrificed Isaac. We could say that he purchased it just because of the sacrifice, but that wasn't enough. There was a time where King David wanted to stop a plague that he started because he was doing a censorship of Israel that Yahweh didn't want him to do. And Yahweh said, okay, choose for you, what kind of punishment am I going to give you? And he said, I better fall into your hands and into the hands of man. And so Yahweh brought in a plague in Israel and thousands died. And the angel of destruction stopped right over Mount Moriah, what is Temple Mount, and that was the threshing floor of Aravna the Jebusite. Can I read in the Bible about him? Aravna the Jebusite. That King David tried to conquer that area of Temple Mount, but he could never because it was a Jebusite stronghold. But he couldn't conquer it with war, he conquered it with purchase. And so he came to Aravna when he saw the angel. Now, I want you to imagine this, what it looks like. Okay? Aravna is now in his threshing floor with all of his servants. And all of a sudden, over his head, he see a fearsome angel stopping right there with a drawn sword. Do you think he was scared? Do you think that if you'd see a fearsome angel over your house standing with a drawn sword, you would be scared? Well, I believe that Aravna was pretty scared as well. And so Aravna was very scared, and then David comes and he says to Aravna, I'm going to do a sacrifice right here to the living Yah so that the angel of destruction passes over us. If not, even you can be destroyed too. Aravna said, yes, king. Okay, he couldn't conquer him. But now he says, yes, king, take it, take it, take it, take it. Free, 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 just go ahead, do your sacrifice. The king said, no, God forbid that I will give my God a sacrifice that doesn't cost me. And so he said, state your price. And he bought for full price. Say full price, please, 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 please. Anybody that will come and tell you, those Jews, they have usurped the Temple Mount from the Muslims. Please tell them that King David bought it for full price. The Temple Mount was bought for full price by our own king, King David. And it is there where King Solomon put the first temple, and it is there where King Solomon dedicated the first temple. And he said, forever, anybody that would pray towards that house, even though the house doesn't exist anymore, still when you pray towards where the first temple was, still the prayers are answered. Totally amazing. It is the center. It is the most important piece of real estate in the world. But it didn't come to us only by promise. It came to us also by purchase. And so the first temple was built there. The second temple, after the Babylonian exile that happened on the 6th century BC, where Judah was exiled to Babylon, Israel, the northern kingdom, was exiled on the 8th century BC to Assyria. But Judah, the southern kingdom, was exiled to Babylon for 70 years. Remember the book of Daniel? When 70 years came, Daniel began to intercede and said, Lord, you told us that we will only be in exile for 70 years. Return us back home. There is a timing for everything. And so now Ezra, the priest, and then Nehemiah, but first Ezra, comes in with exiles, and he rebuilds what we call the second temple. But it was much smaller. It looked much more insignificant. People were even weeping. Those that had seen the first temple in its splendor, the Temple of Solomon, they were weeping because it was like insignificant. And so they built the second temple, and then Nehemiah comes, and when you read the book of Nehemiah, Nehemiah begins to grieve when he's serving at the courts of the king of Babylon, and he begins to grieve. And the king asks him, why are you grieving? He's the cupbearer of the king. Because the walls of Jerusalem are in ruins. And the king sends him with money to rebuild the walls of Yerushalayim. So the time of Ezra and Nehemiah, the rebuilding of Yerushalayim again, second temple period. It is to that temple that Yeshua arrives. But it didn't look so insignificant when he came. Because King Herod the Great, the puppet king placed by the Romans, he was a converted Jew. The family was not a Jewish family that converted to Judaism. And now that king became a puppet in the hands of the Romans. And that King Herod the Great, during the first century, he begins to rule here in the area of Jerusalem. And he magnifies the temple, lifts it up and puts it in a big stage. Stages the temple and makes it beautiful and makes it luxurious and gorgeous and all of that. And that's the time when Yeshua comes. Remember Herod the Great in the Bible? You know, he was a great builder, and so what he built was always very massive. He always was a great butcher, and he was so scared and paranoid that he actually butchered everybody in his own family, because he was always thinking that somebody was going to steal the kingdom from him. But he was a puppet king in the hands of the Romans, and the Jewish people hated Herod completely. From their point of view, the Jewish people did not regard Herod as their king, but as a representative of the Roman Empire. This is the scenario to which Yeshua comes. And now we go back to the beginning when I started to talk to you, and I said that after the destruction of the second temple, because when Yeshua came, he prophesied, and he said, not one stone will be left upon another. So what are you going to see? You're going to see the Temple Mount. You're going to see the Western Wall, which is also called by many the Wailing Wall. The Western Wall being the west side of where the temple was, but not the wall of the temple. It is the wall of the stage that King Herod built under the temple, a precinct to lift up the temple, and that was a wall that was left because it's not the temple, but rather the platform on which the temple stood. No, and we can see that this sukkah is the sukkah of the menorah, the 7-branch candelabra that's getting ready to be put in the third temple. Come on, let's take a look at this. Look at this. This is a menorah. It's already all built and ready to be put, the 7-branch candelabra in the holy place of the third temple. Yes, I believe the third temple will be rebuilt. And you know what? They put a sukkah around the menorah already, kind of like prophetic that the temple is on its way.
What a wonderful tour this has been. The Bible has truly come alive. Truly there is no other tour like this tour. Speaking about Israel is one thing. Seeing is believing. Traveling from the north down to the south, east and west, it's amazing. The land is speaking to you. It comes alive. There's no other tour like this tour. I know there have been many other tours, but Archbishop's tour, it's amazing. You will come, you will see first-hand experience. You will live, you will see how the Israelites lived, how they walked, and how they carried the Torah, and the Torah that we are seeing right now that's blessing many nations. So I'm here, I'm excited. I want to go back to Papua New Guinea. I want to tell all the youths of my country, everybody must come for this tour.
And now back to Bible School on Wheels with Archbishop Dominiquae Bierman.
I want you to know that today we are standing in the refurbished or restored Jewish quarter of Jerusalem. Why restored? Because in 1948 the Jordanians destroyed it completely and left not one Jew in here, murdered all the Jews in the Jewish quarter. That was our independence war. And then came 1967, the Six-Day Miracle War. And when the Six-Day Miracle War came, our army broke into, hallelujah, the holy city to the Lion's Gate, which is more on the east side of the city, broke into the city from the Lion's Gate, arrived to the Kotel, and for the first time, our army and our people prayed again at the precinct of the area of the Temple Mount after so many generations that they couldn't pray there. And so they came in 1967, and everything that you see, trying to keep the same atmosphere that was here in ancient times, has been restored. So you can see all of these stones, and the building behind you, the building behind me, all of these are made with Jerusalem limestone, because it is a law that we can only construct with the Jerusalem limestone. We call it Jerusalem stone. Anywhere you buy something and they say, oh, this is Jerusalem stone. It's this limestone that we find in the quarries in the mountains of Jerusalem, the quarries. And therefore we are built up, but this is all new. This is all restored from 1967. Now, before I go into telling you the importance of the Temple Mount and where you're going to be praying in a moment, and 2 Chronicles 6:32, and in fact the entire chapter from the beginning needs to be read because it's the dedication prayer of King Solomon, I just want to finish one thought that I left you hanging with. I left you hanging with the thought of 1914. And I told you that in 1914 there was the First World War. And I told you that until then the Turks ruled this area for 400 years. In 1914 the Allies, which include Great Britain, they were going to fight a serious war. And if you remember that war, it was a very bloody war. Many people died in the trenches of that war. It didn't look like the Allies could actually win it. And what happened is that there was a man who became our first president, Professor Chaim Weizmann. Professor Chaim Weizmann found the formula from acetone to make explosives. And he sold that formula. He's a British Jew. He sold that formula to the government of Great Britain. Remember that it was called Great Britain then. It wasn't called UK. He sold the formula to the government of Great Britain. But what was the price for the formula? Do you think it was money? No, it was a promise. The promise was that once the Allies win the war, and Great Britain receives the mandate over the then called Palestine. And so that price was that when the Great Britain obtains the mandate, if they win the war, and they obtain the mandate over the Palestine, which includes the Jordan of today, and all of the land of Israel of today, and the Jordan of today, if they obtain the mandate, then they will give the Jewish people a national home. Though there were many Christian Zionists among the Brits that have done very good to Israel, unfortunately the British Empire broke the promise. It broke the promise because they did win the war, and they won the war because they had the marvelous formula of who became the president, Professor Chaim Weizmann, the first president of Israel, in 1948. They won the war in 1917. The Balfour Declaration said, now we are going to see favorably the establishing of the Jewish national home. However, when the Shoah came, the promise wasn't kept. And you know, I want to tell you something. It's very important you will know, because you will be able to answer some Jews also. The first question that is asked by many Jewish people, where was God during the Holocaust? Now remember that Shoah is the name, not Holocaust. Holocaust is a sacrifice pleasing unto Yahweh of good aroma. So we're going to call it Shoah, which means utter devastation. Where was Elohim during the Shoah? Well, let me tell you that Elohim had already prepared the land of Israel, that was then still called Palestine, the non-covenant name, to be the place of refuge for all of the Jewish people that were going to be executed, persecuted, executed, tormented by the emerging Nazi regime. So the place of shelter had been prepared beforehand. But you know what happens? That Yahweh does leave a free will to man. And so in this case, when the British Empire won and received the mandate, they actually blocked a massive aliyah of Jewish people coming into the land. They made a quota, a very small quota, and often returned shiploads and boatloads filled with refugee Jews coming from Nazi Europe to go back to Nazi Europe where they died. Again, there were many wonderful Christian Zionists that were lobbying for Israel at the time, because there began to be an awakening among the Christians that Israel is not done away with. However, the British Empire actually broke the promise. There's always been a remnant of good people and good Christians and Zionist Christians even. But the British Empire as a whole broke that promise. And so instead of rescuing the millions of Jews and getting them into the then called Palestine, which will be renamed again, the covenant name, the land of Israel, those perished in the Shoah. What happened to Great Britain by doing that? Great Britain, where it said that the sun will never set in the British Empire because it actually covered the entire globe, became the UK of today. There's no more empire, no more Great Britain. What happened to Turkey that were preventing actually the Jewish people from taking this place? What happened to Turkey? Is the Turkish Empire existing? No, it doesn't exist either anymore. And you're going to see that every empire that rises up to block, to stop an empire or nation, to block or to stop the covenant of Yahweh with the people of Israel, will suffer exactly the same fate, and it will be no more. Today, the UK is a divided country with a lot of problems, with a lot of financial problems. It's a country that's being possessed by Islam in a major way. Today, Turkey is a country full of Syrian refugees, that even though Erdogan is like speaking big words against Israel, thinking that he's King Kong over there, really, it is actually really in their straits financially as well. A difficult situation as well in Turkey. Do I want it to be that way? No. I would love Turkey and England to be part of the United Nations for Israel, and to fight to turn their nations into sheep nations, one person at a time. But we need to understand that the key of Abraham will always work. Can you say it with me? The key of Abraham will always, if for good in the open position, he will bless those that bless Israel. In the closed position, he will curse those that curse Israel. But his desire is that all the families of the earth would be blessed. That's his desire. And that's why the United Nations for Israel is fighting so that that desire of Yahweh will be fulfilled, and there will be a remnant of sheep nations in the world that will side with the covenant of Yahweh for Israel. Amen.
This message by Archbishop Dominiquae Bierman will continue in the next Bible School on Wheels.
So you had prayer requests coming?
I put everything in, and I felt much better. I feel released, and I believe that a lot of things are going to happen now, back at home. And the people that gave their prayer requests, I believe in my heart that they will receive their answer as the Torah has spoken it. So I believe in the Torah. And I believe in the great king that King Solomon spoke about it. And they're just fulfilling the prophecy and prophetic word that was spoken by the holy prophets and the kings and the queens and the apostles and the Messiah Yeshua Himself, spoken about what is happening in this world and the nation of Israel. Thank you, and shalom to you all.
Shalom. I want to invite you to take GRM, the Global Revival Map Bible School. The Bible school was given to my wife, Archbishop Dominiquae, by God. It was a download, the whole school from beginning to end. It will give you an intimacy with God like you've never known before. Take this course and you won't be the same.
Israel and the Jewish Messiah revealed, restoring the apostolic Jewish roots of the faith. Study online in the comfort of your home. For more information, call us or visit our website, Press Bible School.
If you enjoyed today's program, we'd love to hear from you. Please send your comments, requests, or donations to kad-esh.org or mail to Kadesh Map Ministries, 52 Tuscan Way, Suite 202-412, St. Augustine, Florida, 32092, USA. Have a blessed week, and join us again for the next Bible School on Wheels. Shalom.